Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Ivan Oberon's Money Matters. This is Thursday, June 19th at 6 p.m. Pacific. Thank you so much for joining me, for taking the time out of your busy schedules and out of your busy lives and day to hopefully learn something. And I'm gonna discuss a topic tonight that I think is on everyone's mind, especially when they get started or when they're brand new and they're still working to understand the process of what it's like to go through a deal from start to finish. And when I first got started, I remember, here's a process, here's how it's supposed to work, but what does that really look like? What is the offer supposed to look like? What does a CMA look like? What does a listing sheet look like? And how do I read it? What is the process of how we go through these deals so that I understand and see a clear picture in my head. And I think there's a lot of people out there like that kind of have the basics. They have the understanding of what they need to get things going, to build their power team, to get their hard money lender, how gap funding works, and all those kind of details that you learn along the way. But then there's the paper trail of the deal, or at least what I'm calling the paper trail of the deal, right? Because there's a lot of different documents that you use in the process of getting your deal done. And my name is Ivan Oberon, like I said. Our website is cdcrea.com. And I want to encourage you, before we get started, to become allergic to average, because that's how you're going to take yourself and your business and your future to the next level. Because there's too many people out there that are comfortable with being average, just doing enough, just making enough, just getting by on what everybody else is accustomed to getting by on, just being average. And it takes somebody who's committed to excellence, who's committed to getting themselves to peak performance, to really make an impact in their lives and in their legacy, and whatever it is that you're building, whatever your why, whatever the reasons are to have gotten into this business or to want to get into this business of real estate and entrepreneurship, because obviously there's a lot of things you can do that aren't necessarily going to be real estate. And we like to focus on all those things. We'll just become allergic to average. And we're going to spend probably about 45 minutes going through this stuff. I'm gonna take my time. I'm gonna go through the things that we can go through quickly, and the things that we need a little bit more time on, I'm gonna take a little bit more time. And depending on your questions, I'll open it up for questions, of course. And if you don't have, if you're on your phone or you don't have a way to type in a question, then I'll also call on you, or I'll unmute you. And if there's a way for you to raise your hand, I'll make that available as well. And I'll be happy to spend as much time answering questions either throughout or at the end as you'd like. So depending on your level of interaction will determine how long we stay on here. So here we go. Here's what we're going to go over tonight. And like I said, I'll do my best, as we always do, to keep you engaged, to make it entertaining, because some of these things are kind of boring, right? I mean, my background is in insurance. I'm doing a lot of great things right now. I've been asked to kind of come back into the insurance world by one of our sponsors, who just so happens to be an insurance company, but they cater specifically and exclusively to real estate investors and the real estate investment community. So that's something that I can get excited about, because we're talking about rehabbers, we're talking about landlords, we're talking about large apartment complex owners, we're talking about private lenders, hard money lenders, we're talking about all those people that I can help. And the reason I'm saying that is because insurance, of course, can also not be the most exciting and thrilling thing to talk about, but we'll do it in a way to hopefully keep you engaged and entertained and teach you something. So the very first thing we're going to go over is a listing. What does the listing look like? And I know this may be very elementary to some of you, but we're going to go over it anyway, just kind of in brief detail, just so you see what the different things there are to look at. And the listings do vary a little bit from state to state. So depending on where you are, and if you're rehabbing or investing in your own state, your listing sheets are going to look a certain way. If you're looking to rehab remotely and go into different markets, like we are, for example, we do business in California, we do business in Indiana, we've looked at some business in Missouri, and we're doing business in Atlanta. And all the listing sheets from those states look a little bit different. They have their own little nuances And so we'll talk about that. I'm also going to spend some time on comps and what that actually looks like and what you should be looking for in the comps, because it doesn't matter what state you're in, really. You have to train whoever's giving you your comps and your CMAs. You have to train them a certain way and understand what a real comp is and what's going to be usable in the future. And I know that sounds very basic, but it's really not. And you'll be surprised how many realtors out there, especially if you're dealing with realtors, if you're not the realtor yourself, or maybe you're still working to learn that. You'll get a lot of misinformation, and it's critical that you understand what a comp truly is. And if you can't find one that looks like this, then it's probably a good idea that you either pass on the deal or that you move into a different area or part of that town, because you're not going to be able to comp your properties. Okay, there's some other techniques that you can use to kind of create your own comps in a specific area, but you still have to start with one that's gonna work out for you. We're gonna go over what the offer looks like, some of the key points in an offer, and kind of what that looks like on paper. What does an offer, purchase agreement look like? We're gonna go over the rehab bid and what that looks like, what many of them look like at first, and we're going to go a little bit deeper into what you need to require from your contractors and the people who are actually giving you the bids, so that you can feel comfortable moving forward and that you're in control of what the project is going to look like and what you're actually paying for. Okay, and that's something that is overlooked quite a bit. We'll go over the closing packet, what that looks like, what's in the closing packet, kind of what to look for. We'll spend a little bit of time on the HUD and stuff like that. So you've heard those terms, and if you're on this webinar, then I imagine that some of this stuff you're not an expert on yet. So by all means, happy to do this webinar. The deed of trust, we're going to go over that in a little bit of detail. And of course, when you're dealing with investors, that the deed of trust is one of those safety instruments that you're offering your investors. And all that really is a lien position, a first trust deed, a warranty deed. It's got all these various names depending, again, on what state you're doing business in. You're going to have some states that are title states. You're going to have some states that are attorney states. So depending on who's closing the property for you, you're going to have some different names. We're going to go over an evidence of insurance. Not only what an evidence of insurance needs to look like, kind of how to read it so that you understand what is supposed to be on there, and even more importantly, what type of insurance you need to have, because there's really only one type of insurance that you should have. And I see all kinds of different types of evidences of insurance and the different policy forms and different things, and there's a huge misunderstanding and lack of knowledge or ignorance as to what the right type of insurance is for your projects, whether you're buying rental properties or whether you're rehabbing houses or flipping apartment buildings. There's a specific type of insurance that you need, and if you don't get it and there's a claim that happens, you're going to be in trouble. And of course, insurance doesn't matter until you need it, right? So that's why we buy it, because we don't want to be caught blindsided by not knowing what we're looking for. Contractor agreement, we're going to go over the basics of a contractor agreement, and I'm going to show you some different examples of different contractor agreements and what they look like. Everything ranging from a quarter of a page long to like 10 pages long, and what do you really need, and give you some suggestions. And of course, everything's going to come down to your comfort level. The promissory note, that's basically your note with your investor, and that you sign promising essentially to pay back his principal contribution or his equity contribution. And then we'll go over a joint venture agreement, or a JVA. For those of you not familiar with that, what that acronym stands for, JVA just stands for joint venture agreement. And we'll go over some briefly, just a little bit of details as to what's in a joint venture agreement and what we have in there. And of course, joint venture agreements can also vary widely depending on who structures them, what the terms that you're agreeing with your joint venture partners and your private money investors. So those will be the basics of what we're going to talk about tonight. And obviously there's more when you sell the house and all these different things, but that's what we're going to cover. and hopefully you'll be able to find some value in there. So let me jump in here, and we'll go over first and foremost the listing. Okay. Well, as luck would have it, where do I have that listing agreement? Well, I'm gonna I guess come back to that, and we'll talk about comps just for a second. Okay, so here's some few key points, and we'll come back to that. And I'm sorry, I thought I had everything in there, but I'll find it here in just a second. So one of the key things that I think a lot of people overlook is the square footage. What type of square footage are you seeing? So let's just say, for example, you're looking at your subject property, and it's 1,500 square feet. And then you're going to look at your comparables that your agent is going to send you. And then the first thing you're going to want to do, of course, is verify for yourself that the comps that were sent over to you are actually going to be usable comps. And so one of the first things that you want to look at is the square footage. So again, if your subject property is 1,400 square feet, what you don't want to see is a property that's 1,800 square feet or 1,900 square feet or 2,000 square feet on there. And I see it all the time. So what you're looking for is a 200 square foot range plus or minus. So if your subject's 1,400 square feet, your comps should really be limited to a range between 1,200 square feet and 1,600 square feet. So plus or minus 200 square feet. And that's important because if you go much bigger or smaller than that, it's not going to be a true comp. An appraiser is really not going to be looking at those properties as comps down the road. You want to be looking at the year built. So again, let's just say that our subject property is built in 1950, for example. And then you might see comps built in the 80s and the 90s, sometimes in the 2000s, etc. So with the year built, what you want to focus on when you're reviewing those comps is a 10-year swing, plus or minus. So you don't want comps that are going to be anything higher really than about 1960 or anything lower than about 1940. Because again, that's the typical range that you're going to want to see those comps. That's what an appraiser is going to use as true valid comps, because the construction styles and everything else are going to be similar, because the codes and construction standards are similar within those years. So if you have something that's built in 1980, well, that's going to be completely different, and you're going to see something that going to have an elevated price point because people are willing to pay more for a newer property. So again, a 10-year swing, plus or minus, 1960 down to 1940 if your subject property is built in 1950. The other thing is you're going to want to look at the pictures. Okay, if your agent is not sending you pictures of the comps, you need to get them in the habit of doing that. Because if they don't do that, how are you really going to be able to tell what a comp really is? So that's important. Your square footage, your built, and the style and type of property that you're comping those properties out against are critical. So again, if you see a picture and you have a basic ranch style house and it's got some siding or stucco, whatever it is, depending on what part of the country that you're in, and then you're comping pictures with you have a brick house, or you have some really nice brickwork and concrete work on the outside, and you know that that's not what your house looked like, or it's not what it's going to look like, then it's not going to be a comp. And I've seen this happen before. Not only do we have here's a beautiful brick house, and it's also built 30 years newer, and it's like 400 square feet bigger, and they're using that as a comp. Now, what you can use that for is to get a gauge of what's in the area, what's in the neighborhood, right? And say, okay, well, this is going to have nicer areas, so it's going to maybe draw people in, and it's going to give you a clue as to what type of rehab you're going to want to do. But it's not going to be a true comp if you know that you're not going to be doing that. Your house is not a brick house, and the brick houses will usually sell for more than your conventional stucco or siding houses. So the interior pictures are critical also so that you know if that comp is been rehabbed and what quality rehab was done to that house. So you get a gauge for what kind of rehab you're going to do. It's important to see what kind of job was done in those rehabs, or if one of those comps is just it's just a standard sale that nobody really renovated, but somebody lived in it and kind of took care of it, and it sold for a certain dollar amount. You know that your property, when you're done with it, it's going to be nicer than that. So if you use that as kind of a gauge to say, well, if this one sold for this much and I know mine's going to be better, then you know that you have kind of a safety built into that particular comp. So again, your square footage plus or minus 200 square feet, your built plus or minus 10 years, and your style and type of property are all critical when you're looking at those documents with your listing, with your CMA, and you're training your realtors as to what to send you. Now, if you're in an area where a lot of the areas that we work in have properties that are very, very old, like early 1900s. So in that range, that 10-year plus or minus doesn't necessarily apply, because if you have a property that's built in 1910 and one that's built in 1930, well, that's going to be pretty comparable anyway. So again, take into consideration where you're working and what price, or I'm sorry, what construction years and styles that you're working, depending on the part of the country that you're in. Because here in California, it's very different than Atlanta and Indianapolis, for example. And then of course you want to map your comps. That's another thing that a lot of people don't do, and especially when people send you those comps, a lot of times they don't map them. And the important thing to do, or the reason you want to do that, is just to see how far away those comps are. A lot of times they won't tell you how far they are. And then when you can see it on a map, usually what I do is I'll pull up the subject property on Google Maps, and then I'll type in directions too, and then I'll start typing in the addresses of the comps. And then what ends up happening is you get this nice overhead picture, and of course the blue lines and everything, of where those comps are, how far away they are, and then you can start kind of doing your street view on those things, and kind of start walking the area around, especially if you're not somewhere close by where you can drive the comps and drive the subject property and all that kind of stuff yourself. Plus, even if you are going to do that, this is an easy way to save yourself some of that legwork and determine pretty quickly whether or not it's even worth it. And a perfect example of this is one of the last properties that we were looking at. I did the same thing. I went on Google Earth and did the street view and kind of was walking around the street a little bit. And then I went about a quarter of a mile away, and there was this little bridge. And then on the other side of the bridge, if you looked over, there were train tracks. It was like at the entrance to like a train depot, and it was only a quarter mile away from my subject property. So that immediately was like, okay, we're not moving on this one. I don't care what I buy it for, because that property is going to sit there. Even though the neighborhood was actually kind of nice, they had plenty of little cute houses on that street, because people did have some private ownership there. But I'm not going to get into. At least I made the decision not to move forward on that particular property because of that. And then of course, again, I'm not sure which parts of the states that you guys are targeting, so I'm kind of doing a broad sweep here. Is the distance is critical, and you guys know that a mile or within a mile is usually the standard, right? Especially like in California, if it's less than a mile, you're doing pretty good. If it's less than half a mile, you're doing very, very good as far as is it a comp or not. But if you're in the Midwest or some of those other states, those places are sometimes street by street. Okay, so you have to know the area as well. You have to have people on the ground. You have to have done some research. You can't just jump into it without doing some research to know that, okay, well, this comp is a mile away, and that can be night and day difference. So what's around there? What's closer? Can we get anything closer than that? And if not, then maybe we got to make a different decision here, depending on the area and what you're looking at. Okay, so hopefully that all made sense and was helpful to you guys. And so I just wanted to I know we're not reviewing a specific document, but you guys can understand when you have a comp in front of you, what that's going to look like. Okay, and those are the things that you're going to want to request, and those are the things you're going to want to know, and you're going to want to look at when you're comparing it to your subject property, and that'll help you a great deal. Okay. Well, we weren't supposed to be there yet. All right, so let's go back here and we'll talk about kind of what an offer looks like. Okay. So this particular offer is, and again, these are gonna vary based on the state that you're in. This particular offer I put in on a property that I bought in Indiana, and I blocked off some of the names to block out the guilty parties here in the particular transaction who I bought the house from. But you're gonna have your basic information. So again, I'm gonna dumb it down completely, not knowing how much you guys have seen, how much you guys know. But of course, this is your general purchase agreement. And some states are going to be longer than other states, but you're going to have the different parties that are identified. You're going to have your seller, you're going to have your buyer. When you're making the offer, obviously you're going to be in section A. It's going to distinguish the particular property. It's going to give the legal description. It'll itemize the price, what you're willing to pay, what the earnest money is going to be. And of course, this is going to vary again per state. Now in California, I would never submit an offer with an EMD less than $10,000 because agents just won't take you seriously with anything less than that. And it's been that way for at least the last few years. $10,000 is the minimum EMD. Now, sometimes in the Midwest, you can do $1,000. I've seen $500. $2,000 was what I was doing on a lot of my deals, just to show people that I was serious. This particular property was, we put the offer in for $47,000. Then, of course, you go to your method of payment, and these are all things that are going to work towards making your offer stronger, or as strong as possible, right? The EMD, having the right earnest money deposit is going to be critical, and you don't want to oversell it, right? I'm not going to put a $10,000 EMD on a $47,000 property. That would just look weird. Okay, so again, a couple $1,000, no problem. That's a strong EMD for this property. Now, of course, everybody's looking for an all cash offer, and often there's a misunderstanding of what that means. And is it all cash? And can I switch to hard money? And et cetera, et cetera. And I've always used cash for all my projects. I've been lucky enough to have gone out there and raised private money and been able to do deals. And of course, more money comes when you start doing deals. But you're always going to submit a cash offer, because hard money, even if you're using hard money and gap funds, that's still all cash. Okay, the hard money lender is going to be able to come in and cut that check, and after the due diligence and everything is done, and pay 100% for that house. They're not going to be financing. They're not going to be making payments. They're going to receive a full cash price at closing. Okay, so you're going to make an all cash offer, and then you're going to go with whatever you're comfortable with as far as your due diligence period. All right, and in most cases, especially in these particular deals, I was putting a due diligence period of 3 to 5 days, depending on where I knew my money was and what due diligence I've done already ahead of time. And when you have cash in hand and when you've done all your homework ahead of time, you can make a stronger offer by reducing the due diligence period to as low as possible. Now, when you're first starting out, and maybe there's a higher dollar amount, and there's more things that need to be done, you might go as high as 14 days, and that's still pretty typical, and that's pretty standard. That's pretty quote unquote average. Which again, that's why that is not as strong of an offer, because it is an average offer with that due diligence period. Because most people would do 14 days. Okay, if you can get it 10 or under 10 days. Then it's gonna make you stand out. All right, so those are some of the key factors here. You're gonna waive certain surveys. You're gonna have the ability, if you want to. Again, these are all things that I do to make the offer stronger. We're waiving independent inspections. We're waiving other surveys. We are. If we discover that it's in a high hazard flood zone and we have to carry flood insurance, that's one condition that we put on there, so that we can back out of the contract. And that's pretty typical, and that's still, that won't make your offer less appealing because everybody does that. Okay. Homeowners insurance, of course, we would have to be able to get homeowners insurance, not homeowners, but property insurance. Okay, I know this is homeowners insurance, but the right type of hazard insurance, which we will discuss. So we're waiving our right to independent inspections. Here you'll see our inspection period was 3 days, or your due diligence period was 3 days. Limited home warranty. The other thing is the only other thing is clear title. Obviously, we have to have clear title. That's the only other condition that would cause us and allow us to be able to back out of this particular contract. And we haven't received any disclosures by this point, etc. Title approval. There's where you check that box that we have to have a title insurance commitment for the most current and comprehensive owner's title policy insurance. Okay. Sometimes if you're dealing with a private investor, they might want you to get a lender's title insurance as well. But I've only done that once. It's not something that's mandatory or necessary. You of course are going to pay for all the taxes after the sale, and the seller, we always require that the seller pays for all taxes that have been accrued during the previous calendar year up until the date of close. If we find out that the property is in a homeowners association or has some kind of HOA and we weren't aware of it from the beginning, we'll give ourselves a day to back out if that's the case, because we don't want to be paying HOA dues. All right, so those are the basic conditions under an offer. You'll want to put on there, when does the offer expire? And that serves kind of as a motivating factor that the seller knows, okay, well, I have till this such and such a time to respond. Because one of the biggest things is when you submit your offer, you're gonna just like, okay, is it gonna get accepted? Is it gonna get accepted? And you want to hear that response as quickly as possible. And in some cases, we know that we have the offer just because of the relationships that we had, but we still want to get that verified and signed or countersigned approval, knowing that it's set to go. And of course, you have all your different spots for people to sign. And then here's what it looked like when it came back. They dated it, they accepted it, signed it, etc. And then this becomes an executed agreement, and we're ready to go move forward into escrow. All right. Any question on this, guys, on a offer, what you can do to make your offer stronger? Have you submitted offers and had any challenges? Anything at all before we move on to the next point? I'd be happy to answer questions now. Either type them in the box or raise your hand and I'll unmute you. If not, we'll move on to the next part. All right, going once, going twice. Okay. And we can always come back, of course. All right. Now, you'll notice that we're going in kind of progression, right? So let's see. I have a couple of different contracts to show you. And this is kind of standard. And they're gonna look different, different. They're gonna be done in different formats. You're gonna get them in PDFs. You're gonna get them with letterheads. You're going to get them as a Word doc. You're going to get them in various different things. Okay, so it doesn't really matter how you get them. It more matters what is inside of them. And I've seen contracts that, like I said earlier, are just pages and pages and pages long. And I don't necessarily like those. Okay, they take a lot of time to read. They make doing business very difficult. There are just some things that you want to consider. You're going to want to itemize. And well, let me take that back. Okay. Or let me step back a little bit. When you write a contract, your attorneys are going to write it a certain way. When the contractor writes their contract, their attorneys are going to write them a certain way. And what ends up happening is you have to have a little dance to meet in the middle. because your attorney is going to write it exclusively really for your favor, and their attorney is going to really write it in their favor. And it's a fun game because you understand what's going on, but then that's when the negotiation starts, and then you meet somewhere in the middle as far as what the expectations are. So some of the expectations that you want to think about and talk about, of course, is you're going to agree on the price, and this is after. Well, actually, I'm going over the contract here. I wanted to go over a bid first. Okay. Here's okay. Now that we're backing up, sorry to confuse you guys. So here's a typical scope, right? Before we get into the contract, because I wanted to go in order. It's all relevant, but I wanted to go in order of how the deal progresses. So a lot of times when you're getting your subject property, you're getting your comps, you're putting together your numbers, and you're getting your initial bid, right? You're gonna get a scope, kind of like here's what we're gonna do, and we're gonna make this part nice, and this is the interior, the exterior, the kitchen, the bathrooms, bedrooms, install closet door, shelving, all these basic things, right? And so you get this list, and sometimes you don't even get this much detail up front, and then boom, and then all of a sudden here at the bottom, here's the price, right? So what I want you guys to understand is that you need to get more detail than this. Switching this off and making this room nice and completely gut this thing, and remove the debris, permits, dumpsters, all those are things that are needed. But I want to see what is down here. What is this $67,350 number? What does that consist of? Okay, what is that going to give me? And where are you charging me for what? And so that you understand, okay, well, you're charging me this much for the cabinets and handles, and you know what? That's way too much. I know you can get it for cheaper than that. And you start learning what things are supposed to cost and what things can cost as you go, and as you educate yourself and as you get more experience. And contractors will often, sneak in little extra profits in different areas, and so you want to know where those charges are coming from. So this again is a typical thing. It may be enough to get your foot in the door so that you can calculate your numbers, and so that maybe you can present the deal to an investor. But this isn't where you're going to stop, and you're certainly not going to close on that property and move forward with this much information. So this is what your bid should look like. Okay, and this is after receiving that initial scope. This is what you would break it down to, and have them. You need to find a contractor that is willing and able and happy to itemize everything. And yes, it does require more work. Okay, guys, this is something that you're gonna need to get good at, or work with somebody who is good at it, so that you can understand what that is. Here's the landscaping and grounds. Now, he might have said one or two things, but now I see what the costs of each thing is. And exterior of the home, we're going to replace the roof. And how much is that going to be? What's the total? The chimney, the gutters, the fascia, the siding, the paint, the shutters, the windows. Instead of just saying, I'm going to do the exterior and we're going to do, X, Y, and Z, and either not give a price at all or just give one blanket number. Now I know what he's going to charge me to install these new shutters. Now I know what he's going to charge me to paint, and to do the street numbers, and to do different work to the deck and the crawl spaces. Now I know what's going to happen in the interior of the home, and he's giving me a total price for everything. He's breaking out the labor. He's even giving me his costs and his taxes and everything else. The doorbell, okay, the windows and blinds, the trim, the flooring. I mean, you guys can see that this is helpful, right? Now you know that you're not going to be taken advantage of. You know what their cost is. You know what. Not only that, but you can express the level of the rehab that you're going to be doing to your investors, to people that you're going to be working with. Okay, and so here's the whole budget detail, and then on the next one breaks down the plumbing bid specifically. Then the electrical bid specifically, because these are going to be different contractors, right? The HVAC. So this is what you want to train, and then of course at the bottom your total. But this is what you want to train yourself and your contractors to be able to provide to you. It's going to make your life a whole lot easier. It's going to allow you to cut your costs and really understand what the expectation is of the job. Because if you don't know, exactly how this room is going to be done and what they're going to do here, and pick the cabinets and the counters, and if your contractor is just kind of like making you be all hands off, as nice as that might sound and seem, it's gonna hurt you in the end. You got to have the input. You got to be telling them what you want and how you want it done. Okay, so if you guys haven't seen a bid like this, or if you've never seen a bid, those are the different types of bids that you're going to get. You're going to get here's basically what we're going to do, and this is how much it's going to cost you. Now understand that you need to whittle it down, or burrow it down, or whatever. You got to get the detail is the takeaway here. Okay, so that you understand how much you're paying for things, that you're not getting ripped off, and that they're actually doing what you want done, and you have something to hold them accountable by. All right. So now that you've seen the different types of contracts and bids and et cetera, then of course is the contract. Okay, and the contract really doesn't need to be more. This particular one, for example, is just a couple of pages long, right? Not too intimidating, but it has everything that you want in there. And some of the basic stuff is going to obviously be the price that you agreed to, the timeline at which it's going to be completed. Are there going to be consequences or rewards if that timeline is met or if it's exceeded? What the expectation is for check-ins. Like, for example, I want pictures and a video every single week so that I know what's going on. I will not, in order for me to release the next draw, I will need those pictures and those videos, and I won't release that draw. And I have people on my last project, for example, they would send me the invoice and their draw request, and I'd say, thank you very much, I got it, and I'm waiting for the pictures and everything to get uploaded into Dropbox. And sometimes it would take them 2 or 3 days to get those pictures in there after they sent me the draw request, and that's fine. If that's the way you want to do it, we'll do it that way. But I'm not going to release that next draw until I see the progression in the pictures, what's been done, and you want to have them itemize what was done. At least give you a description of what we did with this money and what we're going to do with the next amount of money. So that you understand, okay, well, we're roughing in this week. We're prepping for paint this week. We're installing appliances this and counters, and basically you want to know what the money's being used for, and so you can kind of spell that kind of stuff out. I had a late payment charge of $75 per day for every day that they went over, and we met in the middle and said, well, for every day that I withhold your draw, once I've received everything, then I would be basically charged $75. So I was comfortable doing that because I knew that we wouldn't delay payment, and they agreed to do it because they felt comfortable on the timeline. Even though I broke them down, I shaved 30 days off of their original timeline because I was like, no, this is way too long. Even though there's weather and there's different things, that is way too long. So as it happened, because of weather and because of other things, they ended up going over by 2 weeks. And I had every legal right contractually to charge them that $75 a day. Now, I chose not to charge them that $75 a day because I was establishing a relationship. They were great at what they did and keeping me informed and being on task. And they went to court for me on one of the properties because there was while the rehab was happening, code enforcement came by, and there was a part of the outside of the house that obviously wasn't to code because they hadn't done that yet, and they inspected like a week before they pulled a permit for it, and so I was getting charged $2,500. And they went to court and they said, hey, here's the pictures, everything's been done already, and blah 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 blah, and the judge took it and they waived the $2,500. So anyway, so it's a case by case basis. Okay, sometimes you get what's the saying, that you get more you attract more flies with honey than you do with vinegar. Sometimes you get farther with a rose than with a stick, or I don't know what that one is, but now I'm talking like Pete here, making stuff up. But the point is, I want to foster that relationship because they were good, and there's more opportunity, more deals that we can work on together. And so I didn't impose that fee. And that was just a choice that I made. All right, and then they put their warranty and what they do, what they cover, et cetera, et cetera. So this is a good agreement, nice 2-page agreement. There's no cookie cutter here, okay, guys. You're gonna want to work on something that you feel comfortable with, that your contractors feel comfortable with, and again, have that dance, meet in the middle until you find something that you both like, and then you can keep moving forward with the same expectations, moving from there. All right. Any questions or comments regarding the bids or the contractor agreement or anything like that? Going once, going twice. Very well. All right. So the closing packet, what does that look like? And let me see. I'll get that pulled up. Okay, so this is part of a closing packet, and you guys, again, not knowing exactly where you all are, keeping it basic. This is the HUD. This is the HUD one. This is what itemizes, who the buyer is, who the seller is, who the title insurance company is, or title company. If you're using a title company, it'll itemize who the attorney is. If you're using an attorney in one of those states, but you basically have the borrowers and the seller sections, and it'll stipulate who's bringing what to the table, who's paying for what, and what the distributions are going to be at the end, and how much money the buying party is going to need to bring to the table. It'll account to things for things like the earnest money deposit. So if you had already made your earnest money deposit, they're going to credit that towards the purchase here. So you'll see how it's an excess deposit here. The sales price was the $47,000. The settlement charges were $10,831. All right, pretty self-explanatory, pretty basic. And then everything just gets added down all the way down to line 1400. Here it'll show you who's paying for the closing fees, who, the delivery charges, title service, deed preparation, insurance corporation for the title, et cetera, mortgage preparation, because we did that mortgage, that lien or that first trust deed for our investor. So recording charges. So you have all these different things, and some of these things can be negotiated also in your purchase agreement. Okay, there's times when I'm buying a property and I want to split closing costs, and I want the seller to split the title insurance with me, et cetera. Same when I'm selling a property. Sometimes they want me to pick things up. Again, it's a negotiation. Sometimes you want to sell your property really bad. There's times when you want to buy it and you want to make your offer strong. Well, there's going to be times when you want to sell it really bad too, and you'll offer certain concessions. You'll offer to pay for certain things, and so these lines are the ones that break everything down. So at the end here on line 1400, you'll see the total amount of money for the settlement, different fees, utility activation fees, etc., that we worked into this particular closing. And then everybody signs. Here's the warranty deed, basically transferring ownership from the seller to me. It's part of the closing packet, because all these things have to be notarized. There's going to be certain things, and again, it's going to depend partially on the state that you're in, what's required. But there's going to be certain places where you are going to need to go and have your signatures notarized, and there's going to be a cost. And when I'm buying, there are much less things. I can do everything electronically in some of these states. When I'm selling, I have to go and physically get my things, other signatures notarized, and also, and I can't just send the electronic copies. Then I have to physically mail the closing documents in, because they need the original signatures from the seller. Excuse me. was thirsty. Okay, then you have your sales disclosures. Again, specifies who the parties are. It goes over the what you know. If there's any conditions that you know, any what they're basically getting here is some of the critical things are going to be any defects or pollution or lead or mold or any of those things. Is there anything within the property that is in disrepair, that doesn't work? And of course, when we're buying some of these things, they're hammered. Okay, so they're major rehabs, and so it kind of doesn't apply because we're nothing works. We're replacing everything. We're gutting everything for the most part in many of these cases. It's identifying that I'm not buying it as a owner occupant, who you are, you sign, etc. But that's what a basic disclosure looks like, and this of course is in Indiana. Okay, your vendor statement. This is what the seller is going to sign, and then here's the real estate mortgage. Okay, this is something that was drafted up. This essentially is what gets recorded as the first trust deed, and who it was to. And I'm kind of skimming through these kind of quickly because again, to protect the innocent and the guilty, right? So and depending on the state that you're in, again, this is going to be called different things, and so that you understand, and I'm sure most of you understand this already, but depending on how you fund your project, whether it's hard money, private money, a combination thereof, or maybe I've used as many as three private money investors in the same deal, depending on who brings the most money, or what their terms are, but typically it's whoever brings the most money gets the first trust deed or the first lien position. Or brings the second amount of money, or basically the second most money, they get the second lien. Or in the case of hard money lenders, it doesn't matter how much money they bring, they're always going to demand and require the first lien. So that's going to be something to consider when you're dealing with different investors, is their tolerance and their aversion to that risk, because understanding that a second lien and a third lien is obviously a less secure position in many cases than a first lien. So if an investor really wants that first lien position, then you got to tell them that you got to either bring all the money, or you got to bring in the highest percentage of the money. Okay, and so the mortgage basically just states who the mortgagee is, how much the mortgage is for. This is what gets recorded, so that when you pull up a title search or whatever, you can see the liens, and this mortgage lien will be on there. It could say what the mortgage is for, and the reason that I drafted a mortgage in conjunction with a actual first trust deed in this case is because, and this is just kind of an additional for instance, in order for this particular investor to pull money out of his pension plan, his 401k, the only way that he was able to lend out of it is for a quote-unquote mortgage on a property. So it's a real estate transaction, but there actually had to be a mortgage document. So the mortgage document stipulated the interest rate, it stipulated who was for, what the lien position was, etc. And so we drafted this mortgage, which recorded in conjunction with the first trust deed. And then, of course, this is my notary, because you have to have those things notarized. This was a basic authorization to install security system. And one thing that you'll have to do if you're working with a contractor, a project manager, somebody on the ground that is pulling permits, activating utilities, or anything like that on your behalf, you will need to create an addendum, or what's the word that I'm missing here? You have to do a corporate resolution authorizing them to be able to do that on your behalf. Okay, so that's just another thing to keep in mind, and it's something that you may do. Limited power of attorney. This is what they're signing to allow the attorney at the title company to draft these documents. Okay, the hold harmless agreements and the tax proration. Again, more disclosures. acceptance and waiver of inspection reports. So we're signing for that in the offer. You'll remember that we waived our right to inspections, and that's basically a whole closing packet. And this one was a total of 24 pages. It's not uncommon, but again, it's pretty basic information. It's, you know, so once you do a couple of them, they become less and less daunting. And I remember when I bought my personal house, and we were sitting with the notary and, you know, signing everything, and it just seemed overwhelming, right? It just seemed like, oh my gosh, like there's more and there's this and that, and now it's just like, oh, whatever, it's only it's only 24 pages. It's pretty. I've seen so many of these that it's pretty rudimentary now. You know, after your first, you know, 5 or 10, uh, they become less and less. I don't know, overwhelming, I suppose. All right. So the deed of trust, we kind of talked about that already in the closing packet. I don't remember if I wanted to show you anything separate or specific. Let me go back to the first one that I skipped, which was the listing, because I was a little distracted, I guess. So now that we've already gone through all that kind of stuff, we'll take it back to the original listing. Of course, when you get comps, it'll look similar to this. But this is what your average listing will look like. And again, the positioning of where some of these things are will differ depending on the state. But I just want you to take note of some of the important things. So obviously, you want to know what the address is. The tax ID can be important. Of course, the list and purchase price are going to be critical items, and these are all things that you're gonna kind of compile when you're looking and comparing them to your comps. The days on market and cumulative days on market. That's always important to know, because that lets you know how motivated a particular party is. Now, this particular property was owned by the city and had gotten a contractor basically had gotten a hold of it and was wholesaling. And what a lot of contractors will do, some of the savvier contractors in their specific markets, they will go out there and they'll hustle and they'll create work for themselves, right? Because that's one of the contractors' biggest challenges is having enough work. They'll create work for themselves by becoming real estate investors, by understanding the market, by plugging into the right circles and the right people. And then they'll go ahead and get those properties under contract. They'll not only collect a little wholesale fee, but they'll do all the bids for you. They'll walk the properties. They'll do a lot of the legwork for you, because they're essentially selling you an additioning for the job. So so that's where this one came from. I got the bid and everything else as part of the listing and the due diligence package. But this one was on the market for 102 days. And now that's not very long when you consider that it was a city-owned property at some point. It's not very long. I've seen some of these, in the 6, 7, 800 day, cumulative days on market, depending on when you get some, where you pick some of these up. So it's an important thing to understand. Sometimes getting the size and dimensions will be listed on there. Give a little bit of information in the actual remarks. That's always something that you want to spend time on. Is what is the current agent saying? Is there any information in there that they're gonna find valuable? How many levels? Obviously, the picture tells you. Sometimes, if you don't have a picture, which I'm sure you'll see at some point, we'll have a picture. How many bedrooms? How many bathrooms? And as you scroll through here, you'll see some of the types of amenities or utilities that the property has. It's important to know as much as you can. If it's on sewer, if it's on septic, those are going to be critical things for you to know when you're assessing the risk and, of course, the potential rehab. Now, as you get down here, it'll show you what the total living area is. Does it have an attic? Does it have a basement? Is it unfinished? Does it have a garage? In this particular case, it says detached garage, but there was not an actual garage on the property. So it had a garage at some point. It got torn down at some point, and they're really, the way some of these properties sit or rest, they'll there won't be anything in the front there. You have to like drive around the back to a different street to access that. So it's kind of funky. Some of you, maybe that's not to you, but here in California, it's kind of funky. It's something that I had to get used to. And then of course, knowing that information, and you want to verify that, you want to look at the Google Earth. You want to know what that neighborhood has, because one of the factors that you're going to consider in your offer or in your rehab price is, will a garage, spending the money on building a garage, will that help me sell this house? And is that something that is desired in the neighborhood? And do most of these comps around here have a garage and this one does not? Well, that's gonna be some critical information for you to know, that people want garages, and this is something that your realtor can tell you too. Okay, so that's why it's so important to have somebody who's there on the ground that's going to be able to tell you, look, in this neighborhood, nobody has a garage, nobody really cares. If they have like a little porch, or just the fact that they have a driveway to park their cars in, that's good enough. And in other areas, just like, look, if you don't have a garage, people aren't going to want to buy this house. And so that's some of the insider information that you want, and you have to know that kind of stuff while you're formulating the numbers for your bid. Because if you don't factor that in, and next thing you know, you gotta factor in another $7, $8, $10,000 to build a garage, which I have done, built one from scratch, poured the foundation and everything because of the area where my house was at, and poured a new driveway, did all that kind of stuff because I wanted to be comparable to what people want and what was in the area. Okay, so there is the listing, and those are all, again, it's going to be the same in your comps. All right, now getting to the evidence of insurance. I cannot tell you, and let me hope you guys can still hear me all right. Yep, our levels are good. Now this is an area where, of course, I'm pretty passionate about it, because I'm pretty knowledgeable about it, and I've seen a lot of people do the wrong thing in this area. And so I'm going to show you a couple of different certificates of insurance, what they look like and what they mean, and then we'll talk about the type of insurance that you should have, and of course how I can help you with that. So these are two different certificates of insurance for the same property, or evidence of insurance, or however you want to call them. Okay, and the first thing to note is, who is the company that is insuring and offering this coverage? Okay, that's typically going to be here in the right-hand corner. Your agency is the people who actually write the coverage on your behalf through the insurance company. The effective date is very critical to note, because I've gotten evidences of insurance for policies that were already expired, or that had a future effective date, and you basically already own the property, and coverage should have gone in force. And the only time that this has happened to me, of course, is when I have been dealing with like a JV partner that's managing the deal for me remotely, or took title to the house, or for whatever reason they took the lead on that in that particular area, and I say, okay, well, send me the evidence of insurance, what's going on, and then I review it for accuracy, and we'll talk about some of the things. That the date is one of them. It's a critical item, because if you close on the property and you own it, and something happens tomorrow, a fire starts, or God forbid anything like that happens, you're already on the hook. The previous owner is no longer on the hook, and if you didn't have coverage, you're going to be in big trouble. So of course, the named insured, you want your entity to be the first named insured. The address of the property, of course, is going to show up. And then this particular evidence of insurance is itemizing what the property value, or what the insured value of the property is, should the thing burn to the ground. Now, it's a dwelling form. It's a special form, so you're going to have, not to get too into insurance terms, but just know that special form is what you want. There's broad form and there's special form, and without getting into the details as to why one is better, special is better than broad, right? So you want special form. It just offers you a better policy form. Now you can choose actual cash value or replacement cost. I will recommend that you always do replacement cost. The reason that I chose actual cash value in this instance is that we're gutting and replacing everything. Okay, so replacement cost will not factor in depreciation. So if I'm only fixing up, if it's a middle of the road to a minor rehab, and I'm not ripping everything out and replacing everything, if a loss happens, I don't want those things to be, depreciation to be factored into the settlement of the loss, right? I want everything to be paid at replacement cost value. Now, when I'm replacing everything already and everything in the house is already going to be brand new, and it's only going to be a month or two old when the property sells, then there really isn't going to be any depreciation. So I saved a couple of bucks by going actual cash value, but in any other case where it's not almost a tear down, I would go replacement cost. Theft and vandalism are two things that really are probably your primary risks and perils in a rehab job. And most carriers out there and most policies out there have an absolute exclusion for theft and vandalism. And that's something that most people don't realize, and they don't know, and they don't understand. And so they get a policy form. This is a true builder's risk policy. And I've seen evidences of insurance for projects that have an HO3 form, which is just a homeowner's form, which is the same type of insurance that I have on the home that I own and live in. And so if there's a claim, guess what? You're not paying for any. They're not. The insurance company's not going to pay for anything. I've seen dwelling fire policies, which is basically the type of policy that you get on rental property. Same thing. Loss happens, insurance companies are going to pay a dime. I've seen basic vacant policies, and the vacant policy is the closest thing to what you need out of the other two that I just mentioned. But the majority of them have either an exclusion, an absolute exclusion, or a significant limitation to the perils of theft and vandalism. So those are certain things that you have to know. Of course, the additional interest. So this is the mortgagee. This is your investor that goes in the first or second lien position. They're going to be named here, and because they're the mortgagee, they are also by default the loss payee. So if a loss happens, the check's going to be cut in the name of you and the mortgagee. And if there's ever a lapse in coverage, or if the policy is in risk of cancellation due to non-payment of premium or something like that, you will receive a notification that you're in risk of cancellation, but so will your investor. And that's not an email or a phone call that you want to get. Say, hey, what's going on with the insurance coverage? Because you gotta keep that in force. Now, the separate portion is, and this separate certificate of liability insurance is just that. This is your liability. So one is property damage, the other one is liability. Liability is in case somebody sues you for something that happens. Say they're walking by, they get hurt, somebody else gets hurt on the job, and even though that's the exclusive remedy for people who are injured at work is workers' comp. Well, God forbid that the contractor let his workers' comp expire, or he missed a payment, or you never know the combination of things that can happen. And somebody tries to sue you. This is your liability insurance, and I recommend carrying $1 million in liability for any of your entities. It's super cheap. It just doesn't make sense not to go with $1 million. And so again, list the same things: who the named insured is, which is your company, who the producer is, who the company is, what type of insurance it is, the effective date, policy number. So it gives everything here, and then of course your mortgagee is the certificate holder, and that's what you want to see. And this is a true builder's risk policy, and I can help you guys with this, whether it's on rehab properties, whether you have rental properties, whether you have apartment buildings, whether you're a private lender, a note investor. It doesn't matter. These guys are the experts. They have the best policies. They write in all 50 states. We can even offer some coverage in Canada if need be. So the point I'm trying to make here is, let me get you set up with the right people. Email me. I'll give you my email at the end. If you need help with any of your insurance needs as it relates to any aspect of real estate investing, I can help you with that. Put you together with the right people so that you get the right coverage. Okay, because that is key. Uh, in most cases, the premium is still very, very competitive as compared to other things that are out there. That I can guarantee you that if and when a loss happens, the last thing on your mind is how much did the premium cost me. Okay, because the very first thing on your mind is, did I get the right coverage and are they going to pay my claim? And the best way to do that is to know the right people and have the right policy. And because this company was started by investors and they are investors themselves, so everything that's set up is specific to all of our needs. And I use them for all my stuff. They have a portfolio based policy, so I can add and delete properties. I don't have to start and cancel policies and do new down payments and all this kind of stuff. I can't speak highly enough of them. And it's because of I use them. And the only reason we established a relationship is because I met the owner of the company. And I was trying to sell him on his own insurance company because we started talking insurance about projects. And then he realized, hey, are you sure you're not already insured with our agency? And I was like, well, I don't know. Do you have so and so working for you? He's like, yep. So it was pretty awesome to know, especially with the background that I had for 10 years in insurance. I wasn't even, at the time, I was still working in the insurance business, and I wasn't even using, business that I could write myself. I was going through these other guys because I did the research and know who they are. Okay, we already talked about the contractor agreement. Thanks for hanging in there with me, guys. I know we're already past the hour mark, but we're almost there. All right. So the promissory note is another one of the safety instruments that you can use with your investors and that you can offer your investor, right? So the first trust deed or the second lien position is one of the safety instruments. The other safety instrument is just a basic promissory note. And if you've never seen one, if you've never put one together, all it really does, and again, they vary in length and description and everything else. So it's kind of up to you and your own legal counsel to draft one in the way that you want. But it basically is going to itemize the parties, who the lender is, who the borrower is, how much money is involved, what the repayment agreement is, how it's going to work, what you're going to offer him when he or them when they contribute the funds. It'll talk about briefly what their responsibilities will be, remedies, and of course, the arbitration agreements and whatever else you want to put in there. I just have 8 lines in mine. Very basic stuff. You sign it. The lenders don't sign this one. This is just for the borrower. And I chose to have it notarized. Now, you don't always have to have it notarized. People won't always require you to have it notarized. One of my attorneys, thinks notaries are a waste of time. So for certain contracts that we draft, I don't require people to notarize their signatures because, he's just like, it doesn't really matter. It's either their signature or it's not. And if they're going to fight it, they're going to fight it whether they have a notary or not. And the outcome's usually going to be the same. But of course, when you're closing a transaction and the title company or the attorney requires a notary, then of course you have to do that. But so with a promissory note, which just basically goes between you and your lender, you can choose to or not to have it notarized. Sometimes it does add another level of comfort in their eyes if you have it notarized. Okay, and then the last thing. Oh, here's a copy of the deed of trust as well. Showed you the mortgage piece. This is just a basic copy of the deed of trust. And again, these look different. They're put together differently. But it speaks of, again, what the subject property is, what you're doing with the deed of trust. Is it a first or a second lien position? What the purpose is, securing a specific interest and backed by equitable real estate, protecting the security of the trustor, what you're agreeing to. Okay, and this is, again, we're not going to go through every single line because uh, it'll bore you guys to death, and it'll take us forever. But I just want you guys to get familiar with what it looks like so that you can start getting the mental picture. Okay, and there again is the notary of what the process is and what everything looks like. Now the final thing is going to be the joint venture agreement. And let's see. Oh, well, here we go. So we have a joint venture agreement here. All right. So this was one of my original joint venture agreements. I had it revised recently, and again, this basically takes the promissory note, and then it really delineates everything as far as who's involved, what the dates are, where the property is located, what the purpose of the joint venture is, what the term of the joint venture is. Sometimes you're going to need definitions as far as what the account is, who's doing what, who the investor is, who the lender is, who the developers are or is. You're going to talk about the equity contributions, basically again what you're estimating the total amount needed. You can break down what the acquisition is, what the repairs, what the insurance is. You can be as specific as you want to be here. I don't always break that out. I usually just put here's a lump sum if I'm getting a lump sum, and it's going to cover X, Y, Z, basically all the acquisitions, the rehab, the holding costs, etc. What the developer's responsibilities are, who's gonna keep the books, what the expectation is for the updates, what the draw schedule is going to be like, who's expected to do what. Here we go. Again, talking about the responsibilities, who's gonna maintain the accounting, the bank account, who's gonna handle the earnest money, et cetera, et cetera. What the repairs and process is going to be like, what the after repair value is going to be like, how the sale of the property is going to work, and are we going to give it a certain amount of days and then we'll talk about lowering the price, or is there, what is the break even point? What if for whatever reason we have to sell below break even? What are the options there? Are we going to basically transfer ownership to the investor and take ourselves out of the deal and transfer all ownership? Are we going to try to put a tenant in there? Are we going to be open to owner financing as an exit strategy? So these are all things, obviously I'm not reading verbatim, but these are all things that are going to be discussed in a joint venture agreement. How the allocation of the profits and distributions are going to be, right? And the investor's money is always first money in, first money out, so to speak. So the way that we break it out is their equity contribution is always returned first. That's the first money out, their equity contribution. Then after that, their portion of the profit goes second. And then whatever is left over and however we have decided that it's going to be split amongst the venturers, if it's me and my partner, or if I have, 2 or 3 partners in the deal, how's that going to be split up? And where does the what investor fit into the profits and everything? Okay, then it talks about where things would be sent to, who again, what the responsibilities are, what the expenditures are. Is everybody going to share in the profits and the loss, or just the profits? Is the investor taking all the risk? Putting all those disclosures, what the insurance requirements are going to be, and the expectations. When is the deed of trust going to be executed? All those different things are going to be talked about in this joint venture agreement. Liability will be discussed, the indemnity, how you're indemnifying each other against certain things. Again, I have a template that I use for my joint venture agreement. This one's not, again, it's not overbearing either. This one's only 16 pages, and that includes the signature pages and the notaries and everything else. So it's there's important things in there. You need to go over certain things, and it takes a certain amount of pages to do so. Now, you don't have to have a 30-page long joint venture agreement for your standard rehab project, but you want to make sure that you have your attorney review the document. Even if you get a joint venture from somebody else or somebody else helps you with it or whatever, please, please, please don't ever use anything without first fully reading it and then having it reviewed by somebody else and getting their take and their opinion, because you have to have your own counsel. So unless you're using the exact same attorney that I'm using and you're doing business the same way I'm doing business, then this joint venture agreement that I have or that I use may not be the right one for you. Okay? So that's my little disclaimer there. All right. So that is everything. We have talked about the listing, what it looks like. We went into detail about comps and how to go over them. We've talked about what an offer looks like and how to make it stronger. We've talked about what to look for in a rehab bid, what some of those bids look like, and what you should get in the habit of getting from your contractors. We went over what a closing packet looks like and what can be expected in there, what a deed of trust is and kind of what it looks like, the evidence of insurance, what types of insurance really to get, and how to read that evidence of insurance and what you want on there, contractor agreement, the promissory note, and the joint venture agreement, and a couple other little things. Hopefully it's been useful to you. And now I want to open it up for some questions, for some comments. If you have a mic, you can raise your hand and I'll unmute you and you can ask your question. If you don't, you can just type your question in or leave any comments there. If you showed up late and you were one of the ones that I saw show up kind of a little bit late, don't worry, this is being recorded and it will be up on our website at c2crea.com. And when you go there, you can check under podcasts and then find Ivan Oberon's Money Matters, and then go to today's episode, which will be the paper trail of a rehab deal. We'll title it something like that, but of course it'll also be under the date, today's date, which is June 19th, 2014. You can also check out videos at youtube.com/Ivan Oberon. And this recording will be uploaded to YouTube and will be embedded on our website on that same page when you scroll to the bottom. So whether you're listening to the podcast right now or you're here listening and watching this live, that's where you can go and get a replay. If we're not currently connected on Facebook and you're listening to this, go to facebook.com/Ivan Oberon. And please send me a friend request. I'd love to connect with you and chat and answer some questions and see keep connected to what it is that we're doing. And if you need to email me for any reason, you can reach me at ivan@c2crea.com. That's Ivan at c2crea.com. And so if you need any information, if there was anything that you saw tonight that you'd like to take a closer look at, just send me an email. I'd be happy to send you a little copy with the same caveat and disclaimer that please do not use anything that you get from anybody, even me, without having it reviewed by a professional attorney. Okay, so that is it, guys. Thank you so much for spending about an hour and 20 minutes of your Thursday evening with me. Today is Thirsty Thursday, so get out there, because if you're hungry for knowledge, you gotta be thirsty for action. And you take that knowledge that you just learned and that you learn hopefully continually every single day, and then you go and you take action with it. That's how you separate yourself from everybody else. That's how you show that you are becoming allergic to average. So if there isn't any questions, if there are not any comments, and you guys are just ready to go, then we're gonna go ahead and wrap up the webinar. Thanks so much, guys, and we'll catch you on the next one.